4 plays already for Miami and 3 first downs. Beck taking a shot.
Pressed, floats one to the end zone. Touchdown! Touchdown!
3 on 3rd down tonight. And he went
I'm back. What you just watched and you're currently watching is a montage of photos of the original first stages of the Supreme Court. You have the original one, Roger Staubach, Larry Bradshaw, Ken Stabler, Doug Williams, Dan Fouts, Fran Tarkenton, Dan Marino, and Joe Montana. The second one. What we do is this is a show that's created to basically give people their flowers. When you give people their flowers, you're gonna pay them respect. We live in a debate culture that does not pay the proper respect to the elders in the game. A lot of people talk about what they like, what they don't like, who's the greatest, who's not. But these games are played in different fashions in each era. The 70s had a different brand of football. You didn't have to, the 5-yard rule didn't exist. As a matter of fact, it's called the Mel Blunt rule for people that don't know, because Mel Blunt will pop you right before you got the ball, and that was legal. So the passing numbers are skewed a bit. As the game evolved and changed into other things, then that second one is Joe Montana, John Elway, Dan Marino, Randall Cunningham, Warren Moon, still with Dan Fouts. Then you had Boomer Esiason and Jim Kelly. Those were the 9 guys of that era. That era consisted of the elevation of the passing game. And now the rules are loosened up, the receivers have a little more leeway and things of that nature, so you will have elevated statistics. You have people like Fran Tarkenton in the first one, who was the all-time leader in passing. When he retired, Dan Fouts took it over, and then Dan Marino took it over. This today is the 3rd episode. what's the beauty in this conversation is everybody continues to be respected, just like the Supreme Court. You will always be known as Supreme Court Justice. If you retire, if you get on at age 40, you leave at age 60, when you die, you will be introduced as Supreme Court Justice, whatever your name is. That's the Supreme Court of Entertainment. This time it's quarterback. Going forward, it'll be quarterbacks, running backs, defense players, but I'm going to bring it up to now. They're going to be people who age out of the Supreme Court. And I want you to understand, you'll be Supreme Court. That's how you get off the Supreme Court. You get removed from the Supreme Court. You just age out of it. You'll continue to get respected. And that's the problem with this debate culture at this point. Everybody wants to yell and scream, who's the GOAT? The GOAT. He's the GOAT. He's not, you can't be the greatest of all time for a period. You're one of the greatest of all time, period. And that's what we're going to discuss today. Today's list consists of people who have been on before and who was on list 2 and list 3. And you know what? Even someone from list 1 and other people will be removed from the list. There'll still be Supreme Court justice. They just won't be they won't be part of the third edition of it. As you see on the screen right now, I'm going to show you a preview of the people who were on there. And I'll let you know what they were capable of and what they did. You're talking about, as you see on the screen right now, you see 4-time Super Bowl champion Terry Bradshaw, 4th league MVP, Super Bowl MVP, the guy who really put the Dallas Cowboys on the map, Roger Staubach, Fran Tarkenton, a scrambler, a thrower, 4th Super Bowl appearances, Doug Williams, the first black guy to become a leader of a franchise, first guy drafted in the first round as a quarterback, in stable, started the Raider Nation soccer. You got Kenny Anderson, never won a Super Bowl, but he made it to one. He took the Bengals to their first Super Bowl loss to the great Joe Montana. Guy right here, Joe Theismann, Canadian Football League, league MVP, Super Bowl champion, 2 Super Bowl appearances. Dan Fouts, one of the most prolific throwers of the football we've ever seen in our lives. Boomer Esiason started the fast break offense, and then it was elevated to the run and shoot offense and mastered by that guy, Warren Moon, and then taking over the K-gun offense with that guy. Now, as we continue to matriculate through this, Randall Cunningham, the first black quarterback to allow to be himself the perfect weapon he was once labeled as. Dan Marino, arguably the greatest thrower of football we've ever seen. Dan Marino, 1 Super Bowl appearance. John Elway put teams on his back. Nobody could ever deny the greatness of Dan Marino. The winner, Troy Aikman, elevated this game in the playoffs and had everybody respecting what he did. And the guy who I consider the greatest of all time, the best quarterback I've ever seen, the one, the only Joe Montana. And when you're talking about the Supreme Court, these people will always be respected. As everything else with the Supreme Court, you can't be on the Supreme Court forever. 3 of those people will be removed from the Supreme Court today. They will still receive their respect, but guess what? 3 of them are going to be removed. The first one will be replaced by this guy. The first removal will be replaced by a guy who most people have forgotten about. He was a guy who was supposed to succeed the great Dan Marino, Drew Bledsoe. As you see, you'll see it as I put it across the crawl on every episode. I put it across the crawl every time. Drew Bledsoe was he came into the league, set the league on fire, came out of Washington State. Most people didn't know who he was. He took over the league at that point. He did to football what Dan Marino did to football. He took it from Dan Fouts. It went to Dan Marino, and everybody thought Drew Bledsoe was going to be that next guy. He's not a Hall of Famer, but for a period of time, he was one of the people who set the standard, and that's what the Supreme Court is. We end all the arguments with the Supreme Court, and for a small period of time, maybe an 8 to 10 year period, that's all it takes to be on this list. Drew Bledsoe was flat out the man. There was no questioning him. Drew Bledsoe was unstoppable. He took the Patriots from the wayward Patriots after the debacle in 1986, January 1986. They got destroyed with Tony Easton and Steve Grogan by the Chicago Bears, one of the most fierce defenses ever. They were wayward from that point on up until they drafted his brother. This guy, Drew Bledsoe, deserves his spot on the end of the bench media's Supreme Court ending all arguments about sports, celebrating, not denigrating. Next up is a guy I am not a gigantic fan of. But guess what? His numbers say he the man. This guy went to 2 Super Bowls. This guy won multiple Super Bowl MVPs. This guy was known as a gunslinger. This guy made it impossible for other teams to count themselves out. No matter how many mistakes he made, he's the all-time leader in NFL history in interceptions, but he retired the all-time leader in touchdowns as well. Brett Favre had a rocket as an arm. He was mobile. He was a guy who could keep you in the game until the very end, even though he may have cost you. He might be when you were behind in the game, but hey, at the end of the day, Brett Favre was one of the most prolific passers in NFL history. He took a show on the road to the Jets, breathed some life into the Jets. He went up to Minnesota, breathed some life into them. Hey, if it not been for a defensive coordinator, Greg Williams, this guy, exactly one of the most hated athletes of his time. If it not been for Greg Williams, this guy may have gone to 3 Super Bowls and he may be the first quarterback to take the Minnesota Vikings to the Super Bowl. Whether you like him or not, whether you hate him or not, whether you're a fan or not, Brett Favre was a standard setter in the National Football League. As I say all the time, I ain't on for a long time. I'm on for a good time. This is almost the end of the program because guess what? We got one more quarterback to add. We have one more quarterback to add. And this guy, at one point, I thought he was one of the more overrated quarterbacks. I went back and started paying attention to him, and I took my 49er bias out of it. I took my I took my media bias, because what we have to do as sports fans is stop not liking people because the media overhypes people. I felt like this guy was overhyped. I went and revisited his career, and I realized Steve Young was one of the greatest quarterbacks in the history of the game. I do still believe, I'm going to take it to the grave, Steve Young. I'm not sure if Steve Young should be mentioned in the greatest of all time. It's a big boy room in my mind. For example, if you don't understand my concept of the big boy room, when you're in the big boy room, the big boy room is the Joe Montanas, the John Elways, the Tom Brady's, the Dan Fouts, the Dan Marinos, and I connect Jim Kelly, Warren Moon, and Randall Cunningham. Just for this iteration of this, Terry Bradshaw will be in. Roger Staubach will be in there as well. Now, the thing is, what I would like for people to understand why I think Steve Young is a bit overrated. I wouldn't put him in the big boy room. Would I put him in the Hall of Fame? Of course I would. Couple MVPs, multiple NFC championship games. But once you look back at his career and what made me upgrade him to one of the greatest of all time and put him on the Supreme Court, is this. Initially, I said, hey man, Steve Young's a bit overrated. They pretty much bought that Super Bowl for him. But you know what? They couldn't buy a Super Bowl for Jim Kelly. They couldn't buy a Super Bowl for Dan Marino. So you still have to step up and get it done. But Steve Young made that 49er offensive line look great when it wasn't. Anytime, and this is the same thing go for one of the other guys on the list, Troy Aikman. People say Troy Aikman is overrated. He had that great offensive line. Did he have a great offensive line, or did they have a great running offensive line? Because anytime your quarterback has to leave the league early due to multiple hits and multiple concussions, maybe, just maybe, he's using his dial as a quarterback to make that line look better than it was. No, sir, it's not a left-hand bias on this. My man, RC, thank you for the support. Anybody who's watching now, hit that like, hit that share, tell a friend, subscribe if you have not. And you already know, if you like what you're seeing, you want to continue to support, what I want you to do, what I would like you to do is this. I would like you to go to www.inthebench.com, www.TEODOFDABENCH.com, and show your boy some love, subscribe on YouTube, and then we can continue this. But Steve Young will be added to the Supreme Court today, because I had a bias against the 49ers one, because when you were a kid, when you were my age, you either like the Dallas Cowboys or the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I watched him take out my man Tony Dorsett and the Dallas Cowboys, and the 49ers do that, so I was like, and then I still believe they overhyped capability. I I do believe Steve Young is a Hall of Famer. I've upgraded him to, in my mind, he's a Hall of Famer to me. He belongs on the Supreme Court, and because of his way of play, his career ended short, and then the people around him, the talent pool was drying up. So Steve Young suffered the consequences of the lack of the ability to maintain the talent around him. He had offensive weapons, but if you don't have those 5 guys in front of you protecting you, your career ends like the one Steve Young. He belongs on the Supreme Court. So that's the recap. We're going to play the video again. The video shows us the original Supreme Court was Terry Bradshaw. We got Roger the Dodger Staubach. We got Ken the Snake Stabler. We have Kenny Anderson, Fran Tarkenton, Doug Williams, Dan Fouts, and Joe Theismann, and the greatest of all time, in my opinion, Joe Montana. The second one includes Joe Montana, also includes Dan Fouts, but we added Boomer Esiason. We added Boomer Esiason. We added Randall Cunningham, Warren Moon, and then we added Troy Aikman. Today, we're gonna remove people. I didn't take the time out to remove people last time. This time we're removing people, and it's not because you didn't play well enough. It's because, well, in the case of Boomer Esiason, these guys elevated higher than him. Boomer Esiason out of there. Joe Montana out of there because he retired in '94, and drum roll please. Joe Montana, Boomer Esiason, and Dan Fouts are gone, and they have been replaced by one Drew Bledsoe, one Brett Favre, and one Steve Young. The beauty in this list, this is an ever-changing list, and the list will change the next time you see me. None of these guys will be on the list next time. Just think about that. It would be an entirely new Supreme Court. It's not that these guys fell off, but it was a new school of quarterback that came in the mid '90s that we had never seen. And you know who they are. I know who they are. And just it's going to be hard. You know what? Brett Favre may stay on this list. Will he or will he not? We will see. Will Brett Favre stay on? Will he won't? Will he not stay on? But we're gonna have some fun with this. If you think somebody should be added, you email at me at theendofthebench.com, THAENDOFEBENCH, offer your suggestion for the Supreme Court. If you want to be a part of the show, you want to be a part of the conversation, if you want to stay anonymous, just say, hey, don't bring me up, but I believe add this guy. That's going to make it fun. It's an interactive program. I look forward to jamming with you guys. I want to make sure you enjoy this. I'm going to have some fun. You can have some fun. And we're going to end this foolish way of talking sports, because sports talk should be fun and informative and engaging, not yelling across the screen about your emotional choices. We are better than that. Folks, with that being said, I am H. This is the Supreme Court, and it is 2 fingers, 1 word, and you know I'm the dopest host in the history of the world, and I will be the dopest